Hey guys, welcome to The Secret History, living in your aquarium. So today we're going to go over very briefly, very quickly, the differences in genders of fish. So probably the most common question I get on my channel is, what gender is my fish? Well, that is a super broad question. There are a lot of types of fish out there in the world. And sometimes certain species, for instance, like an Oscar, sometimes angelfish can be a little tricky. And then, small tetras, things like that, it's very tricky. So, what are some general rules for general classes of fish that can help you identify them? All right, so we're going to start off, and there's exceptions to the rule in all these cases, probably somewhere along the line, especially as humans tinker with fish. But in general, this is a list of ways you can probably tell the difference between genders of your fish. All right, so the most common, easiest way to tell apart most species of fish is color. So generally in the fish world, it's a little different than some of the other kingdoms of animals. But like birds, like a peacock, the males are going to exhibit brighter colors. They're trying to impress the females. Now they also often are a little bit faster, a little more aggressive. They are probably kind of following or stalking the females. Here we have a guppy here, and then we have Endler livebearers. Now, live-bearing fish, there are many kinds: mollies, platies, swordtails, guppies, endlers, goodeids. There are a ton of them. Mosquito fish. In general, the males have coloration and the females have hardly any. This is really true with these strains here. I mean, look at this, is a female. And also, you see that dark dot by the end of her belly? That's known as a gravid spot. So that's another really easy way to tell with a lot of fish, specifically all live bearers, which gender they are. Now, if they're not showing this gravid spot yet, they could be young. They could be a sneaker male. Now, I figured I'd get sneaker males, quote unquote, out of the way early on in this video quickly. So in the fish world, there are many species where the male will hide as a female or adolescent that has not yet gone through the equivalent of fish puberty. This allows them not to be picked on and attacked by the other males, not to be sized up, and then what they do is they try, when the other males are being flashy, they try to sneak in and fertilize the eggs of other females. Now, with live bearers, they are holding the eggs within themselves, and they actually keep the eggs in themselves, and they get fertilized within their belly, basically. So, how does that happen? Well, it brings me to another trait that you'll be able to spot on most live bearers, and occasionally not even live bearers. Other fish have an interesting case of this as well, so keep an eye out for it. But in their anal fin, which is the fin on their body that is by where they use the bathroom, you can see that the males here, the colorful ones, they have sort of a little stick. It's actually a little V-shaped fin that they can maneuver, and they can fertilize the female, and they can kind of flex that, move it around, and actually pass off and fertilize the female by passing it to her gravid spot. Now, she has little triangular fins. She doesn't have this long fin that is a member that sticks out. Now, this isn't an organ or anything. It's just a specialized fin. So that's another way to tell, as well as the gravid spot and the color. Now, let's throw a wrench in this. Let's throw a monkey wrench in this problem and hop over to this variety of endler. Now, these are koi endlers. this is a female. She has color. But clearly, this will come to our next trait. Can you see how ballooned out her body is? She is going to be very clearly pregnant. She is either full of live little babies, and you can see them swimming around the tank also, and you can already start to tell the gender of them very young with guppies and endlers. You can see very pronounced, in fact, more pronounced to scale than in the adults, the shape of that fin. So that fin, that anal fin, you can see whether it is just a little triangle, like on this one, or whether it is a little stick, like, let's see here, like we're going to see on, let's find one that'll hold still. Like this one has more of a little stick. So that's another way to tell. And now let's look at these danios. So these danios, they all kind of look the same, right? Except for, you see this one? It's very clearly full of eggs. This one and this one. So anatomically, the female fish, if they're not live bearers, they have to store a group of eggs, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands. There's some species that only carry a few, but usually it's a big clutch of eggs, and this will then be laid. So they swell up, and those eggs grow, and they fill with nutritious proteins and things, so that when they get fertilized, they are ready to have all the nutrients and DNA guidelines jammed in there to tell us, for those eggs to develop. So you can tell by looking down oftentimes, if it's not apparent here, it's so clear, that this skinny guy is a male, female. It's just very obvious. Now this is also holds true with tetras and a lot of other fish. So that is another way. Now, other fish, like little teeny rasboras, like these chili rasboras, these mera rasboras, they actually, you can see into their belly, and you can see little gray dots. And usually a little gray dot is an egg in that case. Here again, just wanted to point out the gravid spot, that dark spot. Sometimes you can actually see little eyeballs in there. Here you can see the male chasing the female. So even though in that species, in this tin winnie, or as we like to call them, gold ring danios, even though they're not very obvious as far as the difference in male and female coloration, however, the male does have some purple to him that the female does not. She's all metallic colors, but that's very subtle, and you could easily mistake that. But you're not going to mistake that big old belly like on these two. So that's just one way you can tell a lot of fish apart. And if you look from above, you can really see the difference in that. Now, if your fish is sick, this belly will come on in a matter of, at the fastest a couple days, but usually weeks. If it's sick, it will have scales that look like a pine cone, and that means your fish has dropsy most likely, and that is not a pregnancy. That is something that we can talk about in another video. All right, so the other thing that we can look at after color and those sort of things is size. A lot of times the females are going to be larger or smaller. Now, this definitely depends on the species. Oftentimes the females are larger in live bearers. They usually are, but you don't always know how old a fish is. Like I said, there are males that hide as females or kind of androgynous. They're kind of like the David Bowie of the fish world. And you just don't know what they're into, what's going on. So let's move on to catfish. So catfish, they're still going to have the swollen bellies and things like that. Catfish and carp specifically too, so goldfish. There are a couple ways which you can kind of tell the gender as a general rule, or I guess general rule of thumb. And one of those ways is going to be what is on their head. So if you have had them a while and they don't have whiskers. Like females sometimes have a few very short whiskers. But if they don't have whiskers, like in this ancestress here, you know after they're 3 or 4 inches long that they're probably a female. Now, also, the males and females have slightly different shaped bodies. The males are going to have a thicker body all the way back, which gives them power for fighting, curling around other fish, and also blocking the females into caves. Whereas females have a wider head, and their ovaries are actually right about here on either side of them, and they drop eggs into the belly area, which then they lay quickly after they find a cave. But male plecos, in general, the general way they mate is they will trap the female inside of a little cave. Some of them are little ceramic things I have. Sometimes it's a ledge. But regardless, in the wild, a lot of times they use little gopher holes, snake holes in the banks of the river. And that is going to require that the male is 1, stronger, 2, a little bigger, and 3, also has the shape of being able to plug that hole, whereas the female just needs to know wide enough for her head to get in there is fine. Now, real quick, we'll just take a look at this angelfish real quick. He is a male. Females, a lot of times you'll see more of a swollen area here. He is going to the bathroom right now, so he is swollen because he's eaten recently. But the other thing you're going to find is a notch on the forehead. So in cichlids, oftentimes they have a bump on their forehead if they're male, whereas a female will have just kind of a triangular shaped face. That's not always surefire, and so I don't want to say that's the number, that's a hard and fast rule, but it is a rule nonetheless. So this would be the female shaped body. You see what I said? It's kind of teardrop shaped on a plecostomus. This is actually an ancestress. So that's true for about 800 species of them. Now, when we look at tetras and other things, like I said, color is going to be your indicator, as well as who is fighting, who is picking on other fish, and that's where you bring in your deduction, your incredible powers of deduction. And the other thing that we can look for is territory. So a lot of times the males, more so than the females, will establish a nest or an area, and they're going to kind of cordon that off. And you can see this in bluegills, bass, sunfish out in North America, just in the wild. They'll create little nests, little round nests. You can see this with shell dwellers and things. They'll pick a shell. Sometimes plecos will do this, but they're going to be guarding that cave as theirs, or that leaf. If it's a puffer fish, like a pea puffer, it may have a spot it likes. Now, this can also happen with all sorts of fish. Now, here we go. Here is a male. How do we know he's a male? Well, look at that body. It's a big, long body, less teardrop shaped, thick all the way past the second set of fins, and look at those whiskers. So those whiskers tell you that he can smell another male. He can smell when a female is ready to lay eggs from a mile away. And so that's right there a great example of the difference between the two. These are the same species, and they're both adults. So that is a nice example in this specific fish. Now, with cichlids, one more thing I wanted to show you in this tank is that these are crebensis here, and a lot of times they'll lose their color when they're not spawning. But sometimes the way to tell them apart, other than swollen bellies, you're going to see that top fin, their dorsal fin, you're going to see it have different sizes on different genders. And you see how it's erected straight up on that one when he was feeling feisty, I guess. He has more of a point on that fin, and it's just larger. He's actually coloring up right now as we speak. So that's another way to tell, is generally with cichlids, and yes, there are tons of cichlids, New World and Old World, The males tend to have a larger dorsal fin. A lot of times it's more angular, or it has kind of like a tail to it, as far as like the point of that fin kind of goes off, and it's pointy, and it could have like a long flowy ribbon coming off of it in some species. So that's just another thing to look out for. But in the case of Crebensis, Pulcher, Tinniatus, those sort of species, they are going to both color up, both the male and female, and that makes it a little tricky sometimes for people. But you'll see that the females, yet again, are smaller. They have a little bit of a pot belly, and the male, you see that? He has a spade-shaped tail, and then you see how his dorsal fin up top there, his dorsal fin is pointed. It has a little flowy quality to it, and it has color on it. So that, again, like a peacock, he's showing off. And the female will say she's getting into it also by doing the same. Now, one more thing at this tank, the last thing in this tank, is that also males will often do a little dance. So you'll see male fish, whether it's excavating a nest area or just hanging out and shaking really quickly, you'll see that they do various things to show off those colors. So shows that they have a strong metabolism, that they're healthy, that they are nimble, they can dance around. And it shows the females, they're fit, they're colorful, they survived being bright and shiny, and they still haven't gotten eaten. So that's one more thing. Here we have another male crib. Again, he's not as colorful as that other one, but he's got that long fin here, and doesn't have that pot belly, more streamlined. I was hoping the female would pop out and make an appearance. Well, there's a female up here. And you can see she is more oval shaped, and her belly is a pot belly. Here she comes. Here comes the female who has babies currently, and she is colorful. Which, yeah, that's tricky, isn't it, guys? But she's colorful. She has a bit of a point on that dorsal fin. It's not super tall though, and look at that belly. Her belly is big and round, as if it were full of eggs or fat reserves, because they need to survive while taking care of the babies. So, just some interesting hints. Now, for instance, on this pleco, you're not going to see big whiskers. What you'll see to determine sex, other than the body shape, you're going to see, now that's two males right there that just came by. You're going to see little dots, little nodes, they're glands on the top of the face. They may have some little whiskers to sense things like electromagnetic fields and things, movement in the water, pressure differences, and smells. And here we have another female crib. But with goldfish, carp, and other catfish, bottom-dwelling fish, they'll have whiskers or little barbels or sensory organs more so than the females. All right, so let's hop downstairs and finish this video off. Just one more thing I want to show you guys, and that kind of concludes this very general overview of how you can kind of tell apart some fish. All right, so as we're walking down there, I wanted to let you guys know bettas. A lot of people have questions about those. Well, usually if it's colorful, it is the male. So when you're seeing them all in cups, yeah, they're usually all males when you see them in the pet store. So that's pretty easy. They're just going to be selling the males usually, unless you ask specifically for females. All right, so another thing that we can see here, again, new type of Endler. Males have a flashy body, interesting fins that trail off like ribbons, and the females do not. The females have more of a stubby body, and again, here with these Danios here, we can't tell the difference in them by a quick glance, but you can see that the males actually do have slightly larger fins, and the females have bigger belly. They have a bigger belly bulge, whereas this guy is sleek all the way through. Again, here are some Endler females that are a couple years old, 2 years old, and look at that huge gravid spot, that big dot on them. So as they get more mature, it gets more and more obvious. Back here, another female. Over here, a male. So this is a different type of pleco, if we can get a look at him. And again, you see those whiskers. A lot of times they'll even fork as they get older. And the body on this one, yeah, not as clearly bold. See, this will probably be a female, this little one next to him. I know this is a him because of those whiskers. Females will get a couple on their lip, but that's it. But he does have another set of broad body traits at the quote-unquote hip before his anus, but in between his hips he's still wide. He's not a total teardrop, but at a glance you could mistake that easily for a female. Same here. That one that just went around the other side, it's going to be probably a young male who hasn't expressed the traits yet, but you can start to see them forming, well, I can, little nodules on the face. Sorry guys, that is not a good shot. And you can sometimes sex them when they're this small just by shape, but it's not a surefire thing. Now with Corydoras and Synodontis, other catfish like that, they may all have these barbels, but the females will have a wide belly. And as with anything, what they'll have is a belly that droops down a bit more. So if they were to lay on the bottom of the tank, they would teeter-totter. That's how it would look anyways. So this is kind of a list of general, rules. Here's another Danio back in here. General rules for sexing fish. They're not 100%. Down here we've got some loaches. These guys actually have different patterns, and this is what I wanted to show you. The last thing in here is the way you tell these ones apart is the males have a snake skin pattern on their face. Females, there's another snake skin. Females have more of a banded pattern. It's less intricate. So this one is female. You see there's like 3 stripes on her face. This guy has a Mike Tyson tribal tattoo. So you can see how complex they get. Again, this is subjective, and without a sizable group of them, it can be tricky. Also, you're going to look for wide body where the eggs would be, or a hump, or sometimes you can see right through certain species and say, yeah, that's definitely going to be a pregnant, whatever it is. So, again, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you probably like the channel. You probably like what you're hearing, and I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that like button, subscribed, and if you want, I've got merchandise like shirts with illustrations of some steampunk fish as well as shrimp. We've got tons of videos up. We've got, another probably 400 videos live right now, and so if you're looking for a question, try breezing through the channel and seeing if something answers you're just dying to ask the question. It might already be online. Other than that, feel free to join us on Facebook. And if you really love this channel, if you sat through this and you knew the video was over and you can spare it, and I've earned it in your eyes through my various videos, you can also support me through Patreon, and that is of great help. It lets me get new tanks, new fish, keep the old ones healthy, so on and so forth. So same with these Danios upstairs. Here's a younger one from the one upstairs, but I just thought I'd show you again. You can tell the females have that wider body. So if you keep your fish fed and they don't have any parasites, you can tell, boom, female, male. And, for me, it's gotten easier because I've bred a lot of these fish. But There will be quirky traits with every species, and maybe it's certain males have 2 lines and females have 1, you know, something like that, or there's an extra fin somewhere. Whatever it may be, figure it out. These guys, for instance, I have no idea how to tell them apart. It's just, you know, it's hard. Sometimes fighting over territory is all I can tell. And if you see them laying eggs, you can pretty safely guess that they're a female. There are some fish that can switch back and forth, though. Isn't that amazing? Like the clownfish. All right, so, like I said, don't assume that just because one of these things is occurring that you know for sure what gender fish you have, but I hope that these things help you. Because remember, assuming makes you an asshole. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next time. Take good care of your fish, your plants, your tank, and the people around you, and they will take care of you in return. I will talk to you soon, and see you next time. Bye-bye. I'm a half-beak.